The magnificent Erathan races streaked through the plasma tunnel like living lightning, their elongated bodies a blur of blue-white luminescence against the dark vastness of space. They moved at speeds approaching 1,000 kilometers per hour, their multi-limbed forms perfectly synchronized as they navigated the treacherous curves carved through the asteroid belt. Lieutenant Mara Jackson watched from the Earth delegation's viewing platform, her breath caught in her throat. The Erathans' movements were mesmerizing, a dance of precision and velocity that seemed to defy the laws of physics. Their bioluminescent veins pulsed with each acceleration, casting ethereal patterns in their wake. "Incredible," breathed Ambassador Klein beside her. "We've never seen anything like this back home." Mara nodded, but something about the display kindled a familiar fire in her belly. The same feeling she'd had before every Olympic sprint final, the hunger to test herself against the best. The Earth delegation had come to the Galactic Speedway as observers, not participants. Their invitation had been a diplomatic courtesy, a gesture from the galaxy's premier civilization toward humanity's fledgling interstellar presence. The massive grandstands floating in anti-gravity fields around them housed representatives from a dozen advanced species, all watching the Erathans' demonstration with appropriate awe. "Remember," Klein whispered, "we're here to secure a technological exchange agreement. The Erathans' propulsion systems could advance our spaceflight capabilities by centuries. Diplomatic decorum is essential." Mara nodded again, but her eyes remained locked on the racers. Something about their perfect synchronization bothered her. It was too flawless, too coordinated. Where was the struggle, the risk, the raw emotion that made competition worthwhile? As the demonstration concluded, the Erathan racers descended to the central platform where the diplomatic contingents had gathered. The prime consul of the Erathans, a towering figure with iridescent skin that shifted between deep purple and azure, stepped forward. "Esteemed guests," the consul's voice resonated through the chamber, "you have witnessed the culmination of our civilization's dedication to the art of velocity. For 10,000 cycles, we have refined our bodies and minds to achieve perfect harmony with the cosmos. No other species has matched our mastery of speed." The statement wasn't boastful, merely factual. The other alien representatives nodded in respectful acknowledgement. Ambassador Klein stepped forward to offer Earth's formal compliments, but before he could speak, Mara found herself moving forward. Later, she would blame it on the adrenaline still coursing through her system from watching the race, or perhaps on the slight gravitational differences that made her steps less controlled than they should have been. "On Earth," she said, her voice carrying across the suddenly silent chamber, "we race for entertainment." The prime consul's phosphorescent eyes widened, and the other Erathans' bioluminescent veins pulsed in what Mara would later learn was an expression of astonishment. "Entertainment?" The consul repeated the word as if testing an unfamiliar concept. "You trivialize the sacred art of velocity with amusement?" Klein's face had gone pale. The other human delegates stared at Mara in horror. She had broken protocol, potentially jeopardizing months of careful diplomatic groundwork. But it was too late to back down. "We don't trivialize it," Mara clarified, standing straighter. "We celebrate it. On Earth, speed isn't just a measure of physical capability. It's a test of heart, of spirit. Our races bring people together in shared excitement and joy." A murmur rippled through the alien contingents. The concept seemed to intrigue them. One of the Erathan racers stepped forward, younger than the others, with veins that pulsed a brighter azure. "The human speaks heresy," he said, "but I am curious. Do you claim your species could match our velocity for this entertainment?" Ambassador Klein moved quickly to intervene. "Of course not. Esteemed Valaris of House Eris, Lieutenant Jackson speaks out of turn. Humans acknowledge the supremacy of Erathan." "Yes," Mara interrupted. "I believe we could." The chamber erupted in a cacophony of alien vocalizations. The Earth delegation looked ready to collapse from diplomatic apoplexy. But the Prime Consul raised a multi-jointed limb, and silence immediately fell. "Interesting," the Consul said, head tilting at an angle that suggested deep contemplation. "In 10 millennia, no species has dared make such a claim. What would you stake on this assertion?" "Human." Klein stepped between them. "The lieutenant speaks only for herself, not for Earth or the Alliance." "No," Mara countered. "I'll represent Earth. If I lose, I take full responsibility. But if I win—" She paused, considering the stakes. "If I win, we request full access to Erethan propulsion technology." The Consul conferred silently with the others, a strange, pulsing exchange of bioluminescent signals that suggested communication beyond verbal means. Finally, the Consul turned back. "The Erethan Conclave accepts your challenge. Lieutenant Mara Jackson of Earth. A series of 3 races, culminating in the sacred core loop. Valaris of House Eris will represent our people." The young Erathan, who had stepped forward earlier, inclined his elongated head. His veins pulsed with what seemed like eagerness. "And when you inevitably fail," the Consul continued, "you will acknowledge before all gathered species that humans race merely for trivial amusement, while we race for transcendence." Mara extended her hand, a human gesture the Erathans had studied. "And when I win, you'll learn that sometimes entertainment holds more truth than ceremony." As the Prime Consul's cool, multi-jointed appendage clasped her hand, Mara caught the ambassador's devastated expression and realized she might have just staked humanity's interstellar future on her ability to outrun a species evolved for speed. Back aboard the Earth vessel, Zephyr's Folly, the human contingent erupted into chaos. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" Ambassador Klein paced the conference room, his face flushed. "Years of diplomatic preparation, undone in seconds." Chief Engineer Kurov, a burly Ukrainian with a perpetual 5 o'clock shadow, seemed more intrigued than alarmed. "The Erathans' speed is impressive, but their physiology isn't fundamentally different from ours in terms of energy conversion. Their advantage may be more technological than biological." "That's exactly my point," Mara said, grateful for the support. "Their grav boots and quantum slipstream tech amplify their natural abilities. With the right equipment and strategy—" "Strategy won't matter," interrupted Dr. Elena Ma, the expedition's psychologist. She had been unusually quiet until now, her dark eyes thoughtful. "There's something else at work here. The way they move together. The synchronization. It's not just training." The room fell silent as everyone turned to her. "I've been studying their interactions," Dr. Ma continued. "The bioluminescent pulses, the way they communicate without speaking. I believe the Erathans share some form of collective consciousness, a hive mind." Kurov whistled low. "That would explain their perfect coordination. But it's not a complete hive mind like we see in Earth insect colonies," Dr. Ma clarified. "They maintain individual identities while accessing a shared neural network. It's fascinating, really. Fascinating or not, it doesn't change the fact that Lieutenant Jackson has committed us to an impossible race." Klein snapped. Mara stood her ground. "With all due respect, Ambassador, I don't think it's impossible. The Erathans have never faced a human competitor. They don't understand our capacity for adaptation, for improvisation, or our sheer stubbornness," Kurov added with a wry smile. Dr. Ma nodded slowly. "Mara's right. The Erathans' strength, their hive mind, might also be a weakness. They excel at executing predetermined patterns, but how do they handle unexpected variables, spontaneous decisions, emotional responses?" "Exactly," Mara said, warming to the psychologist's insight. "And that's where I'll have the advantage." Klein looked unconvinced, but seemed to realize the decision had been made. "You have 3 weeks until the first race. Make it count." As the meeting dispersed, Dr. Marr pulled Mara aside. "There's something else you should know about Valaris. Your competitor. What about him?" "His bioluminescent patterns show slight variations from the others. Microsecond delays in the pulse synchronization. It's subtle, but it suggests he may not be fully integrated with the hive mind." Mara considered this. "A rebel?" "Perhaps," Dr. Marr said, "or simply young and still developing his connection. Either way, it's something you might be able to use to your advantage." For the next 2 weeks, Mara trained relentlessly in the nebula drift simulator that Chief Engineer Kurov had constructed. The zero-visibility environment was designed to mimic the third race in the series, forcing her to rely on instinct and the AI guidance system integrated into her racing suit. The early results were dismal, without visual references. Mara crashed repeatedly, her times far below what would be competitive. "I don't understand," she said after a particularly frustrating session. "I've trained in sensory deprivation environments before. Why can't I get this right?" Kurov adjusted settings on the simulator. "Because you're still thinking like a human sprinter. Two-dimensional tracks, linear acceleration. Space racing is four-dimensional chess." "He's right," Dr. Marr added, studying Mara's biometric data. "Your brain is trying to impose familiar patterns on an unfamiliar environment. You need to let go of Earth-based intuition." The breakthrough came 3 days later when Kurov introduced a prototype of the slipstream amplifier he'd designed for her racing suit. Inspired by both air-Aethan technology and the fluid dynamics of Earth's fastest swimmers, the device created a quantum field that reduced drag and enhanced propulsion. "It's not as advanced as theirs," Kurov cautioned, "but it should close some of the gap." That same day, an Aethan delegation requested to observe her training. Protocol dictated that they be allowed, as Mara had been permitted to watch Valaris prepare. As she entered the simulator chamber, she noticed Valaris among the observers, his luminescent veins pulsing with what she was learning to recognize as curiosity. This time, Mara approached the nebula drift differently. Instead of fighting the disorientation, she surrendered to it, letting her body respond to the subtle gravitational cues that the AI fed through her neural interface. Her times improved dramatically. When she emerged, Valaris approached her, his movements fluid and graceful even in the artificial gravity of the human vessel. "You adapt quickly," he observed. "Most species require generations to alter their movement patterns." Mara wiped perspiration from her brow. "Humans are good at changing course when we need to." "An unstable evolutionary strategy," Valaris remarked. "The Arathan path to perfection has been singular and unwavering for millennia. And yet here you are, observing inferior human techniques." Mara countered with a smile. Valaris's veins pulsed in what might have been amusement. "I study all competitors, even those destined to lose. It is the respectful approach." "Speaking of respect," Mara ventured, "I'm curious about something. When you race, are you conscious of the others through your hive mind? Do you feel their movements as your own?" The question seemed to startle him. His luminescence flickered briefly. "You have been speaking with your psychologist. She watches us too closely. Dr. Marr is just doing her job. Understanding different species is her specialty." Valaris was silent for a moment, then spoke more quietly. "The network connects all Aethans, but especially those of noble houses like mine. During races, our minds synchronize to achieve optimal efficiency." "Sounds like cheating to me," Mara said lightly. His veins flashed bright indigo. Anger, she guessed. "It is our nature, not deception, just as your individualism is yours." He paused. "Though I sometimes wonder, Wonder what? What it would be like to achieve victory through one's efforts alone. To know that the triumph belongs solely to oneself, not to the collective will of House Eris." Before Mara could respond, the other Aerethans called to Valaris. He departed with a formal bow, leaving Mara to ponder the implications of his words. "He's conflicted," Dr. Marr said later when Mara recounted the conversation. "The younger generation often struggles most with hive mind dynamics. They're born into individuality, then gradually integrated into the collective consciousness." "Can we use that somehow?" Mara asked. Dr. Marr looked troubled. "Using his psychological conflict as a racing strategy seems unethical. More unethical than letting humanity lose a chance at propulsion technology that could advance our civilization by centuries," Kurov countered. "The Arathans set the terms. We're just playing the game." The first race, the Zenvari Desert Run, arrived before Mara felt fully prepared. The course sprawled across a rust-colored moon with gravity approximately 60% of Earth's. Massive sand vortices periodically erupted across the track, creating both obstacles and potential shortcuts for those brave enough to ride the swirling currents. As Mara stood at the starting line in her newly designed racing suit, the enormity of the challenge hit her. The other competitors, Valaris and 2 additional Arathans named for ceremonial purposes, looked completely at ease, their bodies naturally adapted to the lower gravity. Chief Engineer Kurov made final adjustments to her equipment. "The suit will compensate for the gravitational difference," he explained, "and I've programmed the boots to automatically adjust thrust when you encounter the sand vortices." "Anything else I should know?" Mara asked, her mouth dry with pre-race tension. "Yes," Kurov said, his expression serious. "The Arathans will be synchronized through their network from the start. Don't try to match their initial pace, you'll burn out. Find your own rhythm, then use the slipstream tech when you hit the back straight." The starting signal, a burst of electromagnetic radiation detected by their suits, sent them surging forward. As predicted, the Arathans accelerated with perfect coordination, quickly opening a substantial lead. Mara forced herself to ignore their disappearing forms and focused on finding her stride in the unfamiliar gravity. The racing suit performed beautifully, translating her movements into enhanced propulsion that sent her skimming over the russet sands. Halfway through the course, disaster struck. A massive sand vortex erupted directly in her path, larger than any they had observed during reconnaissance. The Arathans, warned through their network, had already diverted around it. Mara had seconds to decide. The safe route around would cost her precious time, but entering the vortex could end her race entirely. She chose risk. Angling her body into the swirling maelstrom, she let the powerful currents catch her. The racing suit's AI screamed warnings as she was flung upward at terrifying speed, sand particles scraping against her visor. For a heart-stopping moment, she tumbled out of control. Then, muscle memory from zero-G training kicked in. She adjusted her body position, using the vortex's momentum to slingshot herself forward when she emerged. The maneuver cut her deficit in half, but the Arathans still led comfortably. As she hit the final stretch, Mara activated Kurov's slipstream technology. The quantum field enveloped her, and suddenly she was moving faster than she'd ever thought possible, the landscape blurring around her. She passed one of the ceremonial Arathan races, then the second. Valaris remained ahead, but she was gaining. Too late. The finish line appeared, and Valaris crossed it 2 seconds before her, with the other Arathans well behind. As the dust settled, Mara removed her helmet, disappointed but not discouraged. She had finished far better than anyone, including herself, had expected. Valaris approached, his luminescence pulsing in what she now recognized as respect. "You rode the vortex," he said. "No non-Arathan has ever attempted such a maneuver." Mara shrugged. "Sometimes you have to take chances. The network predicted you would choose the safer path. Your decision disrupted our calculations." "Get used to it," Mara said with a smile. "Humans are notoriously unpredictable." As they left the track, Dr. Marr intercepted her, eyes bright with excitement. "Did you notice, when you entered the vortex, Valaris hesitated, just for a millisecond, But it was there his connection to the hive mind wavered. What does that mean for us? It means, Dr. Marr said, that spontaneity and emotional responses create interference in their network. And that could be exactly the advantage we need. The night before the second race, the Cryo Archipelago sprint, Mara couldn't sleep. The ice crystal islands that formed the course were beautiful but treacherous, requiring constant thermal stabilization to prevent cracking beneath the racers. She wandered to the observation deck of the Zephyr's Folly, gazing out at the glittering archipelago floating in the void. The crystalline structures refracted starlight into prismatic patterns across the darkness. It is more beautiful in person than in the network's shared memories. Mara turned to find Valaris standing in the entryway, his bioluminescence dimmed to a soft glow that complemented the starlight. "Should you be here?" she asked. "Fraternizing with the competition?" "The network does not forbid observation," he replied, moving to stand beside her. "And I find your species intriguing. Because we're unpredictable? Because you embrace chaos as a virtue." His gaze remained fixed on the crystal islands. "The network teaches that perfection comes through absolute order, yet your imperfections seem to grant you certain advantages." Mara studied his profile, the elegant elongation of his skull, the subtle pulsing of veins beneath translucent skin. "Like what?" "Creativity, adaptation. You changed your strategy mid-race yesterday. The network required a full second to recalculate optimal responses." "A whole second?" Mara teased. "Practically an eternity." "In racing?" "Yes." He turned to face her. "May I ask a personal question?" "Sure." "When you race, what do you feel?" The question caught her off guard. "Many things. Excitement, fear, determination, the burn in my muscles, the rush of adrenaline. But these sensations, they do not distract you." "They're part of it," Mara explained. "The physical and emotional experience is what makes racing worthwhile. Without that, without the struggle and the triumph, what would be the point?" Valaris's luminescence pulsed in a pattern she hadn't seen before. "The Arathan way teaches that emotion clouds perfection. The network filters such distractions." "Sounds lonely," Mara observed. "Lonely." He seemed to consider the concept. "We are never alone. The network connects all." "Connection isn't the same as belonging," Mara said softly. "On Earth, we say that the greatest joy is being fully known and fully accepted by another person. Not merged or subsumed, but recognized as yourself." Valaris was silent for a long moment. Then, with a pulse of light that seemed almost wistful, he said, "Perhaps tomorrow. You will show me how humans race with their emotions intact." The Cryo Archipelago sprint proved even more challenging than Mara had anticipated. The crystalline surface required perfect balance and temperature regulation. Too much heat from the racing boots would melt through the ice. Too little would sacrifice speed. This time, Mara started stronger, staying close to the Arathans from the beginning. Kurov's modifications to her suit allowed her to skate across the crystal surface with precision that nearly matched her competitor's natural grace. Halfway through the course, the race reached the Shatter Zone, a section of unstable crystal formations that shifted unpredictably. Here, the Arathan's network gave them a tremendous advantage, allowing them to communicate path changes instantaneously. Mara watched as Valaris and the others moved in perfect coordination through the maze of shifting crystal. The gap between them widened again. Then Dr. Marr's voice came through her communication link. "Emotional stimulus, now." As they had planned, Mara activated a unique feature of her racing suit, a thermal flare that superheated a section of crystal directly in her path. The surface didn't just melt, it sublimated instantly into a gaseous cloud. From behind, it looked as if Mara had crashed catastrophically. The Arathan Racers network registered the apparent accident, triggering an automatic emotional response: concern, alarm, distraction. In reality, Mara had launched herself through the vapor, using the thermal difference to propel herself over a particularly treacherous section. The maneuver gained her significant ground. As she emerged from the cloud, she saw Valaris ahead, his trajectory suddenly erratic. The emotional disruption had momentarily severed his network connection. Then, disaster struck. One of the crystal formations shifted unexpectedly, directly into Valaris's path. Without the network's guidance, he was heading straight for collision. Without thinking, Mara broadcast a warning through her suit's communication system. "Valaris, hard right." The Arathan reacted just in time, veering away from the crystal spire. The maneuver cost him speed, allowing Mara to close the gap further. They entered the final stretch nearly even, both pushing their technology and bodies to the limit. The finish line approached, a shimmer of energy spanning the void between two crystal towers. Valaris crossed first again, but by less than half a second. As they recovered at the finish area, his luminescence pulsed with what Mara was beginning to recognize as confusion. "You warned me," he said. "The crystal formation would not have been fatal, yet you sacrificed potential advantage to ensure my safety." Mara shrugged, catching her breath. "It's what competitors do where I come from. The victory means nothing if it's not fairly won. The network would have calculated the risk and accepted potential damage if it improved overall race outcome." Valaris said, "Your decision was inefficient, but more fun," Mara countered with a smile. His luminescence flickered in the pattern she now associated with curiosity. "Perhaps there is wisdom in your inefficiency." Later, aboard the Zephyr's Folly, the Earth team celebrated Mara's strong showing. "One more race," Kurov said, raising a glass of synthesized champagne. "And you've closed the gap significantly. The core loop is anyone's game." Dr. Ma nodded, her expression thoughtful. "The emotional disruption strategy worked even better than expected. When you triggered the thermal flare, I registered a complete desynchronization in Valaris's neural patterns." "Is that why he nearly crashed?" Mara asked. "Partly," Dr. Ma confirmed. "But there's more to it. I believe Valaris is actively resisting the network at times. The patterns suggest internal conflict." Ambassador Klein, who had been keeping his distance since the racing challenge began, finally joined the conversation. "Can we use this to win the final race?" Dr. Ma hesitated. "Possibly. But I'm concerned about the ethical implications. We're essentially exploiting a psychological vulnerability." "The Arathans set the terms," Klein reminded her, "and they're hardly being forthcoming about their network advantage." Mara found herself torn. The competitive part of her wanted to win at all costs, but her conversation with Valaris lingered in her mind. His curiosity about human emotions, his questions about racing as an individual rather than as part of the collective. These suggested a complexity the others were overlooking. "What if we try something different?" she suggested. "Instead of disrupting their network, what if we invite Valaris to experience racing our way? Give him a reason to choose individuality over the collective." Dr. Ma looked intrigued. "A positive incentive rather than exploiting a weakness? It could work, especially given his existing ambivalence toward the network. But can we risk our one shot at Arathan technology on such an uncertain strategy?" Klein asked. Mara met his gaze steadily. "I think we have to. Because this isn't just about winning a race anymore. It's about showing the Arathans a different way of seeing the universe. And isn't that what First Contact should be about?" The core loop track represented the pinnacle of Arathan racing culture. The course circled a neutron star at a distance calculated to create significant time dilation effects. Racers would experience the passage of time differently depending on their velocity and proximity to the star's gravitational well. It was not merely a test of speed, but of perception, the ability to maintain focus when one's very experience of time became fluid. The night before the race, Mara sought out Valaris. She found him in the meditation chamber reserved for the Arathan delegation, his form hovering in zero gravity. luminescence pulsing in slow, measured patterns. "I'm sorry to interrupt," she said from the doorway. His eyes opened, focusing on her with that alien intensity she had come to find fascinating. "You are not interrupting. I was merely communing with the network. About tomorrow's race? About many things." He gestured for her to enter. "The network is unsettled by your performance. You have exceeded all projections." Mara pushed off gently from the doorframe, floating into the chamber. "Is that why you've been questioning it? The network, I mean?" His luminescence flickered in what she now recognized as surprise. "Your psychologist observes too closely. Dr. Ma is good at her job." Mara acknowledged. "But I didn't need her to tell me. I can see it in the way you race, the questions you ask. You want to know what it's like to succeed or fail on your own merits." Valaris was silent for a long moment. Then, "Such thoughts are considered immature among my people. The young always experience the pull of individuality before fully embracing the network's wisdom." "And if the pull never goes away?" Mara asked. "What if there's value in maintaining that individual perspective, even within your collective? The network teaches that true transcendence comes only through perfect unity," Valaris recited, but his luminescence pulsed with uncertainty. "And yet, here you are, talking to a human about doubts the network would consider immature." His eyes met hers. "Here I am." Mara took a risk. "Tomorrow, in the core loop, race as yourself. Valaris, just once. Experience what it means to succeed or fail based solely on your own abilities, your own choices. Feel the race the way humans do. You ask me to disconnect from the network during our most sacred competition?" His tone was incredulous, but his luminescence betrayed interest. "I'm asking you to try something new." Mara clarified. "Isn't exploration what your species values? Discovering new frontiers?" "Physical frontiers. Yes. Technological advancement. Not emotional experimentation. Maybe that's the next frontier for the Arathans," Mara suggested. "You've mastered physical speed. What about the velocity of thought, of feeling? The racing of ideas that comes when different minds communicate instead of merging?" She could see the conflict in his luminescent patterns, the rapid pulsing that suggested intense thought. "I should report this conversation to the Prime Consul," he said finally. "But you won't," Mara guessed. His answering pulse confirmed her suspicion. "Tomorrow will be interesting," was all he said. The core loop track lived up to its reputation as the most challenging racecourse in the galaxy. As Mara approached the starting position, the neutron star dominated the view, an impossibly dense sphere of matter no larger than a small city, but with the mass of a sun, warping space-time around it. Chief Engineer Kurov made final adjustments to her racing suit. "The chronometric stabilizers should help with the time dilation effects," he explained. "But you'll still experience subjective time shifts. Trust your instruments more than your perceptions." Dr. Ma added her own advice. "The disorientation will be profound. Remember your mindfulness training. Stay anchored in your body sensations, not your thoughts." As the four racers took their positions, Mara, Valaris, and two Arathan ceremonial participants, the Prime Consul delivered a solemn address to the spectators watching via quantum entanglement from across the galaxy. "Today, we witness the culmination of our sacred racing tradition. The core loop challenges not merely the body's speed, but the mind's ability to transcend ordinary reality. May the swiftest consciousness prevail." The starting signal pulsed across their neural interfaces, and they launched forward, immediately. Mara felt the strange effects of the neutron star's gravity. Her body seemed to stretch and compress simultaneously, and her perception of the other racers blurred. The Arathans surged ahead, their movements once again perfectly synchronized through the network. Valaris matched them exactly, giving no indication that he intended to follow Mara's suggestion. The first circuit around the neutron star produced the most intense time dilation. As Mara approached the point of maximum effect, her consciousness seemed to fragment. She experienced milliseconds as minutes, watching subatomic particles drift through her field of vision with dreamlike slowness. Then, abruptly, time compressed again as she completed the loop, and suddenly she was moving impossibly fast, the track blurring around her. Through the disorientation, she activated Kurov's slipstream technology. The quantum field enveloped her, and she felt herself accelerating beyond what should have been physically possible. She completed the first loop to find herself still behind, but closer to the Arathans than before. As they began the second circuit, she noticed something strange. Valaris's movements were becoming less synchronized with the others. Subtle at first, microsecond deviations in trajectory, slight variations in his luminescent pulses. By the midpoint of the second loop, the deviation was unmistakable. Valaris was racing independently, his movements no longer perfectly aligned with the network's optimal calculations. And he was accelerating. As they entered the maximum time dilation zone again, Mara saw Valaris pull away from the other Arathans. His luminescence flared with an intensity she had never witnessed before, colors shifting through spectrums she could barely perceive. When normal time perception returned, Valaris had taken the lead, with Mara close behind and the other Arathans faltering as they attempted to compensate for the unexpected variable in their network calculations. The final loop began with Valaris still leading, Mara a close second, and the other Arathans struggling to recalibrate. Through her neural interface, Mara could hear the consternation in the Arathan communication channels. Network disruption detected. Valaris of House Eris, restore synchronization immediately. Calculating alternative optimization patterns. But Valaris continued to race independently, his movements becoming more fluid, more expressive. His luminescence pulsed with what Mara could only interpret as joy, pure, unfiltered emotion that the network had always suppressed. As they approached the final stretch, Mara pushed her technology and body to their absolute limits. The slipstream field flickered as it reached maximum capacity. Her muscles burned with exertion, lungs straining against the racing suit's atmosphere. She closed the gap with Valaris. They entered the final time dilation zone side by side. Time stretched again, creating the surreal experience of racing in extreme slow motion. In that extended moment, Valaris turned his head toward her. His luminescence pulsed in a pattern she had never seen before, complex, beautiful, and utterly individual. Then, time compressed, and they surged toward the finish line together. They crossed simultaneously. The monitoring systems, calibrated to picosecond precision, could detect no difference in their finishing times. For the first time in 10,000 years of Arathan racing history, the outcome was a tie. The observation platforms erupted in a cacophony of reactions. The Earth delegation cheered wildly, while the Arathan representatives pulsed in patterns of confusion and concern. As Mara and Valaris recovered at the finish area, the Prime Consul approached, flanked by Arathan elders. "Valaris of House Eris," the Consul's voice resonated with authority. "You disconnected from the network during sacred competition. Explain this heresy." Valaris straightened to his full height, his luminescence steady and bright. "I discovered a new frontier. Prime Consul. The human challenged me to experience racing as an individual, to feel the velocity rather than calculate it. The result was transcendent." "Transcendent?" The Consul's tone was skeptical. "You abandoned millennia of Arathan wisdom for an emotional indulgence." "No," Valaris countered. "I expanded our wisdom. The network has perfected the physics of speed but neglected the metaphysics of experience. There is a kind of velocity that cannot be measured by instruments, the racing of consciousness itself." The Consul's luminescence pulsed in complex patterns as the elders communed through the network. Finally, he addressed Mara. Human, you have altered our sacred tradition in ways we did not anticipate. The treaty terms specified that the victor would receive acknowledgement of their racing philosophy's superiority. Since we tied, Mara said, perhaps the wisest conclusion is that both philosophies have merit. Ambassador Klein stepped forward, seizing the diplomatic opportunity. Perhaps this outcome suggests a natural alliance between our species. The Arathan mastery of collective precision, complemented by human individual creativity. The Prime Consul considered this. The network requires time to process these new variables. But your suggestion has potential. In the days that followed, the implications of the unprecedented race outcome rippled through both human and Arathan societies. The technological exchange proceeded as negotiated, with Earth gaining access to propulsion advancements that would transform their spacefaring capabilities. But the cultural exchange proved even more significant. A contingent of young Arathans, led by Valaris, petitioned for permission to study human competitive philosophies. Meanwhile, human scientists worked with Dr. Ma to better understand the Arathan network, seeking applications that might enhance human cooperation without sacrificing individuality. On the eve of the Earth delegation's departure, Mara found Valaris waiting at the observation deck of the Zephyr's Folly. "I wanted to thank you," he said, his luminescence pulsing gently, "for showing me a different way to experience velocity." "And I should thank you," Mara replied, "for having the courage to try it." "The network has been..." Valaris explained. "The Elders recognize that perfect synchronization creates vulnerabilities, a lack of adaptability to unexpected variables. They have implemented what they call controlled individuation protocols." Mara smiled. "Sounds like they're learning to value a little chaos in their order, as we are learning to find value in your concept of entertainment." Valaris agreed. "The Prime Consul has authorized an experimental racing series that emphasizes what you call the joy of competition, rather than merely the perfection of execution. Will you participate?" His luminescence brightened. "I will lead it, and I hope that when your duties permit, you might return to race again." "I'd like that," Mara said sincerely. As they looked out at the stars, Dr. Ma joined them, her expression thoughtful. "I've been analyzing the data from the core loop race," she said. "The time dilation effects created some fascinating neural patterns in both of you." "What kind of patterns?" Valaris asked. "Moments of perfect synchronization," Dr. Ma explained, "but not imposed by a collective network. Rather, two distinct minds choosing the same path simultaneously. It suggests a form of connection that preserves individuality while achieving harmony. Perhaps that is the ultimate race," Valaris suggested, his luminescence pulsing with new ideas. "Not to outpace one another, but to find the velocity that brings us together without diminishing what makes us unique." Mara considered this. "On Earth, we have a saying, the journey matters more than the destination. Maybe that's what racing is really about. Not who crosses the finish line first, but what we discover along the way. A philosophy worthy of further exploration," Valaris agreed. As the three of them contemplated the vista of stars spread before them, each point of light a potential destination for this new alliance of speed and spirit, Dr. Ma offered a final observation. "In racing, as in life, perhaps the greatest speed is the one that carries us together."